AITA for refusing to let my younger brother live with me after he got out of rehab. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger brother, Jake, 28M. Growing up, he was the typical wild child of the family, constantly getting into trouble and making impulsive decisions. Our parents did their best to guide him, but after college, things really spiraled out of control. Over the years, he had problems with alcohol and drugs, and despite repeated attempts at rehab, he kept relapsing. I have a more structured life. I work a stable job in marketing, live in a small but cozy apartment in the city, and have invested a lot in building a safe, calm environment for myself. 2 months ago, Jake went through another stint in rehab, and this time he seemed serious about getting clean. Our parents are getting older and have their own health issues, so they called me and asked if I could take him in for a while. They argued that living with me would give him a structured, stable environment that could help him maintain sobriety. I felt torn because I love my brother, but I also know how chaotic living with him could be, and I really value my independence. After a few days of thinking, I told them I didn't feel comfortable having him live with me. I explained that my apartment is small, I have work commitments, and I need my own space to maintain my mental health. I also mentioned that having someone with an unpredictable history of substance abuse could be stressful, and I wasn't in a place to take on that responsibility. They didn't push further, but I could tell they were disappointed. About a week later, Jake reached out to me himself. He seemed genuinely remorseful and insisted that he was committed to staying clean. He asked if he could come stay with me for a month, promising to follow every house rule I set and not interfere with my life. He said that being in my apartment would give him structure and motivation to continue his sobriety. I felt a mix of guilt and anxiety. On one hand, I wanted to support him and give him a safe space. On the other hand, I worried about the emotional and practical consequences of having him live with me. After talking it over with a close friend, I decided to offer a compromise. I told Jake that I could support him, but not by having him live with me full-time. Instead, I offered to check in with him daily, help him find local support groups, and even pay for a few therapy sessions if he needed. I also suggested that he could find a halfway house or a sober living environment where he could get structured support while maintaining some independence. When I explained this to Jake, he became upset. He accused me of not believing in him and said that I was being selfish, only thinking about my comfort instead of helping my family. He said my apartment could be a fresh start for him and that by refusing, I was making it harder for him to stay clean. I tried to calmly reiterate that I cared about him and wanted him to succeed, but that my home isn't equipped for someone with his needs, and I didn't want to risk creating tension that could trigger a relapse. The situation escalated when my parents got involved. They seemed angry at me, saying I was letting Jake down at a critical moment. They reminded me that family is supposed to help each other, especially in tough times. I pointed out that I was offering other forms of support, but they argued that nothing is as effective as having him live in a safe environment with family. The conversations ended with tension, and my parents now barely speak to me unless it's necessary. Jake hasn't stayed with me, but he's been contacting me daily, alternating between gratitude for my help and frustration that I won't let him move in. He's recently told me that he's feeling discouraged and might stop trying to stay clean if he can't find the stability he wants. I feel incredibly guilty, but I also know that if I let him move in, I could jeopardize my own mental health, career, and the safe space I've worked hard to create. I've thought about this constantly and have considered trying to make my apartment work somehow, but I honestly don't think it's feasible. I fear that if I bend, it might enable him in ways that aren't healthy for either of us. I've also considered that maybe I'm being too rigid and that I could make adjustments if it genuinely helps him stay sober. But at the same time, I feel that setting boundaries is important and I don't want to burn out or resent him. Now I'm a loss. I feel guilty every time I think about him struggling, and I worry that my refusal will harm our relationship long term. At the same time, I can't shake the feeling that moving him in could backfire, and I don't want to be responsible for any relapses or conflicts in my own space. I've been trying to be supportive in other ways, but my family seems to view this as inadequate. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother live with me after rehab. I want to help him, but I also need to protect my own stability and boundaries. I feel torn between doing what might help him the most and taking care of myself, and I'm not sure where the line should be drawn. Every conversation leaves me more anxious, and I can't tell if I'm being unreasonable or if my family's expectations are unrealistic. I really want to support him in a meaningful way without sacrificing my own well-being, but it's hard to see how I can do that while keeping my apartment off limits. I'm struggling with balancing compassion, practicality, and self-care, and I feel like I'm failing on all fronts. AITA, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my mother move in with me, even though she claims I owe her after everything she did for me growing up. This is a long story, and I want to provide all the context so people understand my perspective. I, 31F, have always had a complicated relationship with my mother, Karen, 56F. Growing up, she was extremely involved in my life. On one hand, she provided for me and my siblings, and I acknowledge that she worked hard to make sure we had food, school supplies, and extracurricular opportunities. On the other hand, she was emotionally manipulative at times, very critical, and prone to guilt tripping. I always try to navigate my relationship with her carefully because of how easily small disagreements could escalate. I moved out when I was 22 after finishing college and have been living independently ever since. I have a stable career in marketing, own a small home, and have a partner, Alex, 33M, who is very supportive. For the past few years, I've been careful to maintain boundaries with my mom because I want a healthy adult relationship, not one dominated by guilt or obligation. Recently, my mother told me she wants to move in with me. Her reasoning is that she's getting older and that she did everything for me, so now it's my turn. She framed it as a natural progression. She raised me, so I owe her shelter and support. At first, I thought she might be joking, but it became clear she was serious. She has no health issues, and she is fully capable of living independently, but she claims that she will be lonely if she doesn't move in. I immediately explained that I cannot accommodate her living here. My house is small, and having another adult move in indefinitely would disrupt our routines, our privacy, and our space. I also mentioned that Alex and I have discussed long-term plans, including potential children, and a full-time resident would complicate that. She responded by saying that those are my problems and that I should put family first. I offered alternatives. I suggested that she could look into senior communities, rent a nearby apartment, or even stay with my aunt who lives close by. I also offered to help financially if she needed assistance with moving or rent. She dismissed every suggestion, saying they were inadequate substitutes for living with your own daughter. Since then, she's been pressuring me constantly. She calls multiple times a day, sends long emotional texts, and tries to guilt me by reminding me of everything she sacrificed for me, money she spent on college, all the time she devoted to taking care of me, and even small personal sacrifices like skipping vacations so I could attend summer camps. She frames all of this as a debt I now owe her. I try to explain that love and gratitude don't equate to an obligation to cohabitate, especially when it would negatively impact my life and relationship. I also told her that forcing her into my home could create resentment on both sides, which would ultimately damage our relationship more than help it. She said I was being ungrateful and selfish, and that she expected more from her daughter. Things escalated when she started telling other family members about it. Some of them have sided with her, saying I should honor her sacrifices and that I'm being cruel by refusing. A few even hinted that I'm breaking family bonds and behaving irresponsibly as an adult child. I try to explain my reasoning calmly, but they all say I'm overthinking and should just let her move in. Alex is frustrated as well. He supports me setting boundaries, but he is worried that if my mother moves in, it will create constant tension. He also feels that her presence would make it difficult for us to maintain our plans for the future, including travel, career moves, and starting a family. I share these concerns with my mother, but she dismisses them, saying that my life should revolve around hers now. I feel guilty because part of me understands her loneliness, but another part of me feels manipulated. I also worry that giving in would set a precedent. She may expect to control more aspects of my life in the future. I value our relationship and want her in my life, but I also need to protect my household, my relationship, and my mental well-being. I've tried compromise, offering regular visits, weekend stays, or helping her create a comfortable, independent living situation, but she refuses everything short of living with me. She even suggested that if I don't agree, she might stop speaking to me, which I know is meant to guilt me. I've spoken to a few friends, and some say I'm right to set boundaries and not allow someone to move in indefinitely, while others say family obligations should take priority and that I should sacrifice my comfort for hers. I feel torn because I love my mother, but I also feel that her demands are unreasonable and emotionally manipulative. So, AITA for refusing to let my mother move in with me, even though she claims I owe her for everything she did while raising me. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé bring his dog to my wedding. This is going to be long, so bear with me. I, 28F, am getting married in about 3 months, and while I thought I had everything under control, a huge conflict has erupted with my family that I can't seem to resolve. I need an outside perspective because I feel like I might be overreacting, but at the same time, I feel strongly about my boundaries. First, some background. I come from a fairly traditional family in terms of events and celebrations. My parents are not the type to want chaos or unpredictability at family gatherings. My sister, Emily, 26F, has always been a bit of a free spirit. She's really close with her fiancé, Jake, 27M, who is a very loving and responsible guy, but he's also extremely attached to his dog, Baxter. Baxter is a medium-sized dog, very energetic, and according to Jake, very well trained. Jake and Emily have been together for 3 years, engaged for a year. When Jake and Emily first got together, I liked him okay, but our personalities clash. He's laid back, carefree, and sometimes oblivious to social norms, while I'm more structured and particular. That's never been a big deal because it's her life, not mine, but now it's directly affecting mine. I plan my wedding as a relatively formal affair. It's outdoors at a beautiful garden venue, seating about 150 people with a dress code and everything. My husband-to-be, Mark, 30M, and I have been planning meticulously for almost a year, and I have spent countless hours coordinating with vendors, sending out invitations, and making sure the event goes smoothly. We specifically chose a venue that doesn't allow pets because I did not want the unpredictability that comes with animals, tripping hazards, allergies, barking, or even people who are afraid of dogs. I mentioned this to my sister months ago, explaining politely that pets would not be allowed. Emily seemed understanding, but then Jake started making comments about how unfair it was that he couldn't bring Baxter. He said things like, he's family too, and it's not like he'll bother anyone, he's just a little guy. Emily, caught in the middle, kept trying to mediate, saying she understood both sides but wanted both her fiancé and her sister to be happy. About 2 months ago, Emily brought up the topic again and said Jake really feels left out and it would mean a lot if Baxter could be there. I reiterated that the venue strictly prohibits pets and that it would be unsafe and chaotic to have a dog at a formal wedding. I also pointed out that many guests have allergies and some are afraid of dogs. I tried to suggest a compromise, like having Baxter in the photos beforehand or letting Jake take him on a walk during the day, but no, Jake wanted him at the actual wedding ceremony and reception. This is where things started to escalate. Emily told me I was being unreasonable, that I was prioritizing my own preferences over her fiancé's feelings. She even said that I was excluding part of the family because Baxter is important to Jake, and she thinks my stubbornness is hurting the relationship between us. My parents tried to mediate, and they were kind of on Emily and Jake's side. They said I should consider that this is a once-in-a-lifetime day, and maybe I could bend the rules a little to accommodate Jake. I explained that bending the rules could set a precedent and make other guests feel uncomfortable, and the venue would literally not allow me to bring a pet on site. They countered that I could talk to the manager again, or even sneak him in, and Emily said that if I refused, it would cause a permanent rift. I feel trapped because I do not want to compromise on this. I've spent months planning this wedding down to the last detail. I have already spent thousands of dollars, and I cannot risk the liability or disruption that a dog could cause. On top of that, I have severe allergies to pet dander, and several guests have expressed that they are nervous around dogs. I don't want anyone to have a bad experience on the most important day of my life. I explained all of this to Emily, but she accused me of being controlling and selfish. She even suggested that I was trying to make her choose between me and her fiancé, which I feel is completely unfair. Last week, things blew up over text. Jake sent me a message saying he can't believe I'm being excluded from my own sister's wedding and that I don't care about family. He called me stubborn and rigid. I didn't respond right away because I was too upset, but I did eventually text back calmly, explaining again that it was not personal, that it was not a matter of liking or disliking him or his dog, but that it was a matter of safety, health, and venue rules. I offered alternatives like having him involved in photos before the ceremony or doing a dog cameo at a post-wedding event. Emily read my messages and responded with a long rant about how I was ruining her wedding experience and how I was being difficult over a dog. She ended the message by saying if I refused, she might not attend my wedding. That was the last straw for me. I told her that I couldn't control her choices, but I could control my wedding, and I would not allow Baxter at the ceremony or reception. I also told her that I felt hurt that she was threatening not to come over a dog. After that, our parents tried to step in and asked us all to calm down and find a compromise, but I honestly feel like I have exhausted all options. I have considered having a smaller, private event, but that's not feasible financially or logistically. I have also tried suggesting a dog-friendly celebration after the wedding, but Emily and Jake insist that Baxter's presence at the main event is non-negotiable. At this point, the tension in my family is extremely high. My sister hasn't spoken to me except for brief, cold interactions, and Jake has sent a few passive-aggressive messages to Mark, calling him rigid and anti-family. I feel guilty because I don't want to ruin my relationship with my sister, but I also feel strongly that I should not have to compromise on my own wedding day, especially when the reasons are legitimate. I'm starting to wonder if I'm actually being too rigid or if my boundaries are reasonable. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé bring his dog to my wedding, even though they feel strongly about it. I would appreciate some honest feedback. I love my sister, and I want her at my wedding, but I also want my day to go smoothly and safely without drama or chaos. Where do you draw the line between being accommodating and standing your ground? AITA for refusing to lend my brother a large sum of money after he lied about his financial situation and got angry when I said no. I, 34F, have a younger brother, Jake, 31M, who has always had a habit of exaggerating or bending the truth to get what he wants. I've been financially responsible my whole adult life, saved carefully, and have built a small emergency fund. Jake, on the other hand, has had several jobs, none of them long-term, and has frequently borrowed money from family members, rarely paying it back in full. A few months ago, Jake called me and told me he was in a financial emergency. He claimed that his landlord had suddenly raised his rent, his car broke down, and he was at risk of being evicted unless he came up with $5,000 immediately. He said he didn't want to ask our parents because they would lecture him, and he insisted I was the only person who could help him. I was hesitant, but agreed to meet him for coffee to talk through the situation. During our conversation, he explained that the landlord was threatening to lock him out and that he had no one else to turn to. I asked if he had tried negotiating with the landlord, contacting a local housing assistance program, or asking his bank for a short-term loan. He insisted that those options wouldn't work and that I was the only one who could save him from losing his apartment. I told him that $5,000 was a lot of money and that I wasn't comfortable giving it to him without knowing exactly what was going on. I asked for proof of the rent increase, repair bills for the car, and any eviction notices. Jake got defensive, saying I didn't trust him and that I was making things worse by questioning him. I decided to do a little research because something didn't feel right. I called the landlord. After getting permission from Jake, he said, and asked for general information. The landlord said Jake's rent had increased by a very small amount that was manageable and that he hadn't issued any eviction notices. I also checked with a local mechanic who had previously serviced his car, and they said there had been no recent urgent repairs reported. When I confronted Jake with this information, he became angry. He accused me of snooping and of trying to control his life. He insisted that he really needed the money and that I was being selfish by refusing. I explained that I wasn't refusing to help him in general, but I couldn't give him $5,000 based on lies or exaggerations. I offered alternatives. He could stay with our parents temporarily, take a short-term loan from a bank, or look into local assistance programs for rent and car repair. He refused all of these options and stormed out. After that, he started messaging me daily, pressuring me to lend him the money, calling me cruel, and accusing me of abandoning him. He even went so far as to post vague messages on social media suggesting that I was heartless and only care about money. Some mutual friends asked me if I could just help him to keep the peace, but I refused. I felt like giving him money would reward dishonest behavior and set a precedent for future manipulations. Our parents are disappointed in me because they feel I could have helped him to avoid family drama, but they also understand that he has a history of irresponsibility and lying. I try to remain calm and explain my reasoning, but Jake refuses to see it. I'm worried about long-term consequences for our relationship, but I also feel that I cannot compromise my boundaries and risk being manipulated or losing a significant amount of money. I keep thinking about whether I could have handled it differently, maybe offered a smaller loan with conditions, or helped him in a different way. But every time I imagine it, I see a scenario where he would continue lying and expecting money without accountability. I want to maintain a relationship with him, but I also feel that he needs to face the consequences of his actions and learn to handle his finances responsibly. So, AITA for refusing to lend my brother $5,000 after he lied about his situation and became angry when I said no. I feel like I made the responsible choice, but family keeps telling me I should have done more to help him in a crisis, even if it meant ignoring the lies. I'm struggling with guilt versus principle, and I'm not sure if I cross a line by prioritizing honesty and financial responsibility over appeasing him. This has caused tension not only between Jake and me, but also with our extended family, who are now divided in their opinions about whether I did the right thing. Some friends suggest I could have given him a smaller, conditional loan or mediated through our parents to ensure accountability, but I can't shake the feeling that giving him money without proof would have been enabling. I still want a healthy relationship with him, but right now, it feels like trust has been broken beyond repair. AITA for not letting my sister's fiancé plan our wedding because I don't trust him. I, 29F, have been with my partner, Alex, 31M, for 6 years, and we recently got engaged. Planning a wedding has been exciting, but also stressful. My sister, Clara, 27F, has always been a big part of my life, and I really value her opinion. When we got engaged, she was thrilled and insisted she wanted to be heavily involved in the planning. I was happy about this because we've always been close, and I thought we'd enjoy the process together. The problem started when Clara got engaged to her fiancé, Ryan, 30M. Ryan is generally well-liked by most people in our family, but I've always felt a bit uneasy around him. I can't put my finger on exactly why. He's charming and polite on the surface, but there have been multiple times where he's made offhand comments that rub me the wrong way. Things like subtly criticizing my career, questioning my financial decisions, or making jokes at my expense during family dinners. My sister laughs them off, saying he's just teasing, but over time it started to make me feel disrespected and uncomfortable around him. Recently, Clara suggested that Ryan should help plan my wedding with me. She said that since he's so organized and creative, he could help with venue selection, catering, and even the guest list. At first, I hesitated, but I tried to be polite and said I appreciated the offer. I also mentioned that I had a clear vision for the wedding and wanted to be involved in every step of the process. Clara said she understood, but then she told me that Ryan insisted he would like to take over a lot of the planning because he's good at logistics and knows how to make a wedding run smoothly. I immediately felt uncomfortable and said no. I explained to Clara that while I appreciated their willingness to help, this is my wedding and Alex's, and I wanted to make the key decisions ourselves. I added that because of some past interactions, I don't fully trust Ryan to respect our wishes or maintain the tone and style we want. I tried to phrase it diplomatically, emphasizing that I wanted Ryan involved in ways that didn't interfere with decision-making, like offering opinions when asked or helping with minor tasks. Clara didn't take it well. She said I was being unreasonable and unfair to Ryan, who has always been polite and helpful. She insisted that he was just trying to help and that I was overreacting. I tried to explain that it wasn't personal against Ryan as a person, but rather that I needed boundaries to ensure my wedding went smoothly and according to the vision Alex and I had. She accused me of not trusting her judgment and of being controlling, which upset me because this is about my wedding, not about her. The tension escalated when Clara started making passive-aggressive comments at family gatherings like, "I guess some people can't handle advice from others," or "Not everyone can see the bigger picture, I suppose." I tried to ignore it and focus on planning with Alex, but it's exhausting and makes family events uncomfortable. I've also had mutual friends suggest that I might be overreacting or that I should let Ryan help. He only wants to contribute, which makes me doubt myself sometimes. I've considered compromising by letting Ryan handle one small aspect of the wedding, like helping coordinate the playlist or assisting with decorations, but I still feel uneasy. I worry that once he starts making bigger decisions, he'll try to assert more control, and that could lead to conflicts between me, Alex, and even my sister. I want Clara to be happy and involved, but I also want to maintain control over our special day. Alex has been incredibly supportive and agrees with my decision. He's reminded me that the wedding is ours and that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family. But Clara has started sending me long messages expressing disappointment, saying that I'm driving a wedge between us and that I'm making Ryan feel unwelcome. I feel guilty because I love my sister and I want her to feel included, but I also can't shake the sense that letting Ryan take charge would compromise the day we've envisioned for ourselves. I've tried to frame it in terms of logistics and respect rather than personal feelings, but Clara seems to interpret my stance as an attack on Ryan. I also tried to suggest that Ryan could help with tasks that don't require creative control, like addressing invitations or helping with transportation logistics, but she insists he should have a bigger role. Every conversation ends with her upset, and our family is now divided. Some support me, some think I'm being unreasonable. Now I'm questioning whether I'm being too rigid. Maybe I'm overthinking Ryan's intentions or projecting past discomfort into this situation. But at the same time, I've always valued my personal boundaries, and the idea of someone I don't fully trust making key decisions for my wedding feels wrong. I don't want to start my married life with resentment or regret. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé plan significant parts of my wedding because I don't trust him. I feel like I'm protecting our day and my boundaries, but I also don't want to alienate my sister or create lasting tension. I'm stuck between wanting to assert my needs and feeling guilty for upsetting someone my sister loves. I've tried to compromise, I've tried to explain my perspective, and I've tried to involve Ryan in smaller ways, but it seems like nothing I do is enough to satisfy my sister. I genuinely want her support and involvement, but I can't shake the worry that giving Ryan control could ruin the experience Alex and I are dreaming of. I feel like I'm failing at balancing family relationships with my own priorities, and I'm not sure if that makes me the asshole in this situation. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay in my house for an indefinite period, even though she says I owe her. This is a long story, but I want to give all the context. I, 34F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, and we've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, our parents favored Emily in subtle ways. She got more freedom, more praise, and less responsibility for chores. I never held that against her because we were kids, but it did shape how I approach fairness in adulthood. I've always tried to be supportive and help her when she needs it, but I also value boundaries and independence. Emily has had a rough few years. She lost her job about a year ago and has been living with our parents while figuring things out. Our parents are unable to support her indefinitely, and she's been stressed about moving out. A couple of months ago, She called me and asked if she could stay at my house temporarily because it's closer to job opportunities. She framed it as just for a few weeks until she finds her own place. I was hesitant, but initially agreed because I wanted to help, thinking a short-term stay would be manageable. Emily moved in about 2 months ago. At first, it was fine. She stayed in the guest room, and we tried to work out a schedule for shared spaces like the kitchen and bathroom. I even helped her get set up with job applications and resumes. However, the situation quickly started to feel overwhelming. She hasn't actively looked for work in any serious capacity, and she's been relying on me to provide meals, laundry, and cleaning beyond what I'm comfortable with. She also started bringing friends over without asking and expects me to adjust my schedule for her convenience. I tried talking to her about it. I explained that our agreement was for a short-term stay and that I cannot host her indefinitely. I reminded her that she needs to take responsibility for finding her own place and that this is affecting my household, including my partner and our daily routines. Emily became defensive and upset, claiming that I'm being cruel and that I don't care about family. She said that after everything I had, I owe her this, and that turning her away would be a betrayal. Emily's definition of temporary seems very different from mine. Every time I bring up a timeline or boundaries, she frames it as me being selfish and controlling. She has even said that I'm punishing her for being vulnerable and that my refusal to let her stay indefinitely shows that I don't love her as a sister. I feel like no matter how politely I communicate, she twists it into a moral attack. This has caused tension with my partner, Alex, 35M, who is supportive of me, but frustrated with the constant disruption. He says the house feels crowded, and the added stress is affecting our relationship. I also have a full-time job, and the responsibility of hosting someone who is not contributing equally is exhausting. I've tried to find compromises like offering to help with deposits for a rental, covering short-term Airbnb costs, or helping her move in gradually over weekends, but she refuses anything that doesn't involve living here full-time. Emily has also reached out to other family members, framing the situation as me being selfish and unwilling to help. Some relatives have contacted me to pressure me into letting her stay, saying that family obligations should take priority over personal boundaries. I tried explaining my perspective, but they dismissed my concerns, suggesting I should just be a good sister and give her the support she needs. I feel trapped between wanting to support my sister and protecting my own home and mental health. I love her and I want her to succeed, but I also feel that giving in would enable her to avoid taking responsibility and could create resentment between us. I've spent weeks trying to maintain a balance, helping her look for work, offering advice, contributing financially in small ways, but living together indefinitely is beyond what I can manage. I've been reading about similar situations, and I know it's reasonable to set boundaries, but I can't shake the guilt. Emily constantly reminds me of everything she feels I owe her emotionally, and I start to doubt whether I'm being a bad sister. At the same time, I feel that giving in would set a precedent for future conflicts and stress. I also worry about long-term impact on my household. Hosting someone indefinitely without contribution or responsibility is straining my relationship, my work life, and my own mental health. I've tried to communicate calmly, offer compromises, and involve external options like rentals or short-term stays, but Emily rejects all alternatives. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay in my house indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her for everything I've done for her in the past. AITA for ruining my best friend's wedding over a harmless joke. I never thought I'd be writing one of these, but here I am. This happened about a month ago, and I'm still reeling from the fallout. I'll try to be as honest and detailed as possible. I guess it all starts with me, my best friend Clara, and her fiancé, Jeremy. I've known Clara since college, and we were inseparable for over 10 years. Jeremy came into the picture about 3 years ago, and while I liked him well enough, I never really felt as close to him as I did to Clara. That's important because it sets the tone for everything that happened next. So, Clara and Jeremy got engaged last year. From the beginning, I wanted to be involved in all the wedding planning. I was thrilled when Clara asked me to be her maid of honor, which seemed like a dream come true. We started planning everything meticulously. Bridal showers, bachelorette parties, seating charts, themes, color schemes. You name it, I was there. I was always careful to be supportive, or so I thought. I tried to give advice, help with vendors, and manage some of the stress that Clara was feeling. She was grateful, and I genuinely enjoyed helping. Fast forward to the wedding weekend. It was supposed to be perfect. The rehearsal dinner went smoothly, and I was feeling pretty good about everything. The day of the wedding, I was helping Clara get ready in her suite, surrounded by bridesmaids and her mother. Everyone was buzzing with excitement. I had this idea for a joke, a bit of harmless humor I thought would lighten the mood and make Clara laugh. I had seen it online, and it involved a funny, slightly embarrassing anecdote about Jeremy that he had shared with me years ago. I was confident it was mild, and I never imagined anyone would be offended. So during the reception, after the speeches, and just before the first dance, I got up to make a toast. I started with some heartfelt words about Clara, how she was my best friend, and how happy I was that she had found Jeremy. Then I transitioned into the joke. I told the story about Jeremy's disastrous attempt at cooking for Clara early in their relationship. The audience laughed, and I assumed everything was fine. But Clara's reaction was immediate. She froze, her smile vanished, and she looked genuinely upset. Jeremy looked confused and a little embarrassed, but at first, I didn't think much of it. After the toast, I noticed Clara avoiding me. She barely spoke to me during the dinner and didn't come to dance with me like she usually would. I figured she just needed a little time to cool off, but by the end of the night, she confronted me privately. She was crying, which made me feel terrible, but I genuinely didn't understand why she was so hurt. She told me that the story I told wasn't funny in her eyes. It made Jeremy look incompetent and, worse, humiliated him in front of all their friends and family. She said she felt betrayed because I knew it was a sensitive topic and I chose to make it public anyway. I tried to explain that I thought it was lighthearted, that I meant no harm, and that I wanted everyone to laugh with us, not at him. But she was inconsolable. She said she couldn't enjoy the wedding after that and felt humiliated herself for not stopping me. After the wedding, things only got worse. Clara hasn't spoken to me much, and when I've tried to apologize and explain my side, she has shut me down. Mutual friends are divided. Some think I overreacted with the joke. Others think Clara is being too sensitive. Jeremy, to be honest, has been distant too. He hasn't reached out much, though he did text me a short, thanks for coming message, which I thought was polite at least. I've replayed the moment in my head hundreds of times, trying to figure out exactly what went wrong. Part of me thinks it really was just a harmless joke. Another part of me realizes I might have crossed a line, especially since weddings are such high-stress, emotionally charged events. I've also considered whether the dynamic of our friendship played a role. I've always been very involved in Clara's life, sometimes maybe too much. I've been known to push my opinions, even when not asked, and I wonder if this incident is the culmination of her feeling like I sometimes overstep. But I also feel like this is a major overreaction. I've never intentionally hurt her or Jeremy, and my intentions were entirely to make them and everyone else laugh and feel joyous. In addition, my family has been involved in this drama. They've been saying things like it's just a joke, people need to lighten up, and weddings are for fun, not crying over a small story. But I feel torn because I want Clara to be happy and maintain our friendship. Yet I also can't deny that I feel like I'm being unfairly vilified. I've considered writing her a heartfelt letter, but I worry that it will either come across as defensive or be ignored entirely. Now, a month later, our friendship feels fractured. Clara hasn't blocked me, but our conversations are short and awkward. She didn't invite me to the post-wedding brunch with the bridal party, which hurt because I was heavily involved in the planning and expected to be included. Mutual friends are starting to avoid discussing the wedding with me because they don't want to pick sides, which isolates me further. I've apologized multiple times in person and over text, but it hasn't helped. I can't stop thinking about whether I really am the asshole here. I had no malicious intent and thought the story was funny and harmless. I didn't mean to overshadow the wedding or embarrass anyone. But clearly, I misjudged, and I see now that Clara felt humiliated and betrayed. I feel guilty, but I also feel like I'm being punished for something I honestly thought was a loving joke. The emotional weight of this situation has been intense, and I can't figure out if reconciliation is possible. So, AITA for telling a joke at my best friend's wedding that ended up upsetting her and her husband? I truly meant it as a lighthearted, fun story to entertain the guests, but I understand that weddings are high stakes and everyone's feelings are fragile. I just didn't think my intentions would backfire so badly, and now I'm questioning everything about my behavior and our friendship. I would love clarity from outside perspectives because I feel like I'm stuck between harmless fun and major betrayal, and I genuinely don't know where I stand. I'm hoping this post can help me understand whether I crossed a line or whether Clara is being overly sensitive. I would never want to damage our friendship permanently, but right now, it feels like I've already done so, even unintentionally. AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding after she explicitly asked me not to bring my girlfriend. Even though my relationship is serious and long-term, I, 29M, have been with my girlfriend, Emily, 28F, for over 4 years. We live together, share finances, and are planning to buy a house soon. Our relationship has been very stable, and we've integrated into each other's families. My cousin, Rachel, 31F, announced her engagement last year and invited me to her wedding. The issue started when she told me that her wedding would have a strict no plus-ones policy due to budget constraints. I initially didn't think much of it because I assumed she meant casual acquaintances and distant relatives, not serious partners. A couple of weeks later, Rachel called me directly and said, "I know Emily is your girlfriend, but I'd really prefer you come alone. We can't accommodate plus-ones, and I don't want anyone uncomfortable." I was stunned. I asked why it mattered if Emily came, considering that she is a significant part of my life. Rachel said it was personal, and that having my girlfriend there would complicate things with other guests. I pressed for clarification, but she refused to elaborate and insisted I respect her wishes. I tried to explain that Emily is not a casual date. She is my partner. We share our lives together, and not including her felt like erasing an important part of me. I offered to contribute extra, to cover her meal, or to make any other accommodations that might ease her concerns, but Rachel said that it wasn't about the cost. It was about the dynamic of her wedding. At this point, I started asking family members if they understood what she meant. Everyone had a different story. Some said Rachel has a history of being controlling about guest lists. Others said she doesn't like certain family members' partners for unspecified reasons, and a few admitted that they didn't really know why, but felt I should respect her wishes. The situation escalated when Emily found out. She was understandably hurt and felt like she was being rejected by my family before even meeting some of them at a major life event. I agreed with her feelings and felt torn between family loyalty and my commitment to her. I attempted one more conversation with Rachel, emphasizing that excluding Emily would make me feel like I was betraying our relationship. But Rachel became defensive and said I was putting words in her mouth and overreacting. After much deliberation, I told Rachel I wouldn't be attending the wedding if Emily couldn't come. I offered to send a generous gift and a heartfelt card expressing my congratulations, but I could not attend alone. Rachel reacted very negatively. She accused me of being selfish, claimed I was trying to force my girlfriend into a situation she wasn't invited to, and suggested I was prioritizing a romantic relationship over family. She posted about it on social media in a vague way, implying I had caused drama and was being difficult. My extended family has mixed reactions. Some agree with me, saying that it's unreasonable to expect someone to attend a major family milestone without their long-term partner. Others have criticized me for being rigid and disrespectful of Rachel's wishes. I've been called dramatic and accused of letting Emily control my decisions, even though the choice was ultimately mine to make. I also worry about future family events. Weddings, holidays, and reunions may become tense if people take sides, and I don't want to be ostracized or create ongoing conflict. At the same time, I feel strongly that a life partner should not be excluded from an event that celebrates a significant life milestone for someone I love. The idea of pretending Emily doesn't exist for a day is emotionally painful and goes against the values I share with her. I've considered compromises like attending the ceremony but skipping the reception, or letting Emily attend only certain parts, but every option feels like a half measure that would still diminish her role in my life. I want to honor Rachel's wedding while maintaining the integrity of my relationship, but it seems impossible under these conditions. So, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding after she explicitly told me not to bring my long-term girlfriend, even though I offered multiple compromises and wanted to respect her day. I feel like I'm in an impossible position. Either betray my relationship or risk family resentment, and I'm unsure if I'm being selfish or justified in standing firm. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to lend my car to my cousin after he crashed his last one. I, 34 am, have always been the responsible one in my family when it comes to finances and possessions. I work a demanding job in IT, and I've spent years saving up to buy my car, a used but very reliable SUV that I depend on for work, errands, and weekend trips. I take great care of it, and it's been a huge help in keeping my life organized. My cousin, Mark, 28M, has had a much more chaotic approach to life. He's had multiple jobs, often unstable, and he's gone through a series of cars over the years, most of which he ended up crashing or damaging due to reckless driving. Despite repeated accidents, he never seems to learn from his mistakes and often relies on borrowing from family members whenever he's in between vehicles. He's always polite about asking, but I can't help feeling frustrated because I've seen this cycle before, and I know he doesn't take proper care when he's behind the wheel. A couple of weeks ago, Mark called me and told me that he had crashed his car yet again. He sounded stressed and panicked, and he asked if he could borrow my SUV for a couple of weeks until he gets his next one. He promised he'd be careful, would fill up the gas tank, and would even pay for any maintenance or minor repairs needed while he had it. He also assured me that he was serious about being more responsible this time. I immediately felt uneasy. I reminded him that he has a long history of damaging cars and that I rely on mine for work and personal responsibilities. I explained that lending it to him would put me in a difficult position if anything happened. I offered alternatives, like helping him find a temporary rental car or giving him a small loan to use toward a reliable used car of his own. I try to be diplomatic and supportive, but I drew a firm boundary around lending my vehicle. Mark didn't take it well. He accused me of being selfish and said I didn't trust him despite his promises. He told me that I was the only person in the family who could help him out, and that by refusing, I was putting him in a very difficult spot. I reminded him that trust has to be earned and that his repeated accidents made me cautious. He argued that this was different, that he's learning from his mistakes, and that I should give him a chance. Things got worse when he started messaging other family members, framing me as unhelpful and rigid. My aunt, who has always been close to both of us, tried to mediate and suggested I should cut him some slack this one time. I explained my reasoning to her, emphasizing that while I want to support him, I also have responsibilities and can't risk my own transportation. She sympathized but still seemed disappointed, which made me feel guilty. Over the next week, Mark repeatedly called and texted, asking if I had changed my mind. He sent long messages about how difficult his situation was, how he didn't want to ask anyone else, and how much he trusted me to help him. I started feeling stressed and anxious every time my phone rang. I also noticed that some other family members were subtly blaming me for creating tension, which made family gatherings awkward. I thought about whether I could compromise. I considered lending him the car for short, specific trips, like driving to work or grocery shopping, but even that made me nervous because accidents can happen quickly, and I'd be responsible if something went wrong. I also thought about letting him drive my car under supervision, but practically, I couldn't always be available, and I didn't want to be constantly monitoring him. I offered again to help him with financial support or to co-sign a rental car or a used car, but he dismissed those suggestions as too complicated or not immediate enough. It feels like he's expecting me to put my own life and resources on the line while assuming no risk himself. I understand that he's in a difficult situation, but I also have to consider my own safety, financial stability, and peace of mind. My partner has been very supportive and agrees that my decision is reasonable. They've reminded me that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family, and that wanting to protect my property doesn't make me a bad person. However, I still feel guilty when I see Mark struggling to get to work or other appointments. Part of me wonders if I'm overreacting or if I'm being too harsh given that he genuinely says he wants to improve. Family dynamics are now tense. Mark is upset with me and has been avoiding me at gatherings, and other relatives occasionally make comments about me being unhelpful or hard-hearted. I want to maintain a good relationship with my family, but I can't compromise my own boundaries and responsibilities. I keep thinking about what would happen if I lent him the car and he had another accident, and the thought alone makes me feel like I made the right decision. So, AITA for refusing to lend my cousin my car after he crashed his last one. I want to support him, but I also need to protect my property and my own life. I feel torn between family loyalty and personal responsibility, and I'm not sure if I'm being too strict or perfectly justified. Every time I think about it, I feel guilty, but I also know that making an exception could lead to disaster. I've tried to find alternative ways to help, offered financial guidance, and suggested temporary solutions that don't involve my own car, but Mark doesn't seem willing to accept them. The family tension has grown, and I'm struggling to navigate the balance between compassion and caution. I want to be supportive without putting myself at risk, but it's unclear if my boundaries are being perceived as reasonable. This situation has left me stressed, anxious, and guilty, even though I feel like I'm protecting both myself and my possessions in a responsible way. I'm just unsure if refusing him makes me the asshole. AITA for refusing to lend my brother money for a business opportunity, even though it could cost me my family. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger brother, Jason, 28M. We grew up in a small town, and while we were close as kids, our paths diverged sharply as we got older. I went to college, started a career in marketing, and eventually bought a condo in the city. Jason, on the other hand, struggled with steady employment, bouncing between odd jobs and small ventures that rarely worked out. Our parents always tried to support both of us equally, but I often felt like I had to be responsible for him in ways that my friends never had to worry about with their siblings. A few months ago, Jason called me out of the blue. He said he had an amazing business opportunity that required a $15,000 investment up front. He claimed it was some kind of import-export deal with electronics, and that it would double our money in a few months. He sounded excited and convincing. Normally, I'd be hesitant to lend money to anyone, but part of me thought maybe this is his chance to finally get on his feet. He was pleading, emphasizing that he didn't want to ask mom and dad because he didn't want to worry them, and that he trusted me more than anyone else. I told him straight up that $15,000 is a lot of money for me, and I couldn't just hand it over without more information. I asked for a detailed business plan, proof of potential clients, any contracts and references. He got defensive almost immediately. He said that if he shared too much, the opportunity would be taken by someone else, and that I just didn't trust him. I reminded him that I'm his sister and I want him to succeed, but that giving someone $15,000 without solid proof of viability is risky and irresponsible. He accused me of being selfish and implied that I didn't care about him or his future. The situation escalated over the next week. He started texting and calling constantly, alternating between desperate pleas and angry messages. He sent screenshots of projections he had made in a spreadsheet that looked very amateurish and, frankly, fake. When I pointed this out, he said I was being negative and that I needed to support my family, no matter what. Then it got worse. Our parents, who had been out of the loop so far, called me. Apparently, Jason had told them I refused to help him because I didn't love my brother enough to see him succeed. Mom was upset and said I should reconsider lending him the money, that families help each other in times of need. Dad echoed similar sentiments, saying I should be the bigger person and that this was about supporting family. I tried explaining that this wasn't about love, but about financial responsibility. I also pointed out that Jason has a history of failed ventures, and there was no guarantee he wouldn't lose the money. They weren't having it. Jason continued pressuring me daily, and I finally put my foot down. I told him, I love you, but I will not give you $15,000 for a business deal I don't trust. If you want to pursue this, you'll have to do it without my money. He didn't take it well. He started posting on social media about me, framing me as the unsupportive sibling who doesn't care about family success. Friends and acquaintances began commenting, questioning why I wouldn't help my brother. Our relationship has basically deteriorated at this point. Jason stopped speaking to me directly, and Mom and Dad are still subtly guilt-tripping me. They occasionally drop comments about how family should stick together and how I need to think about what's truly important. Meanwhile, Jason has since tried to get loans from other friends and acquaintances, and unsurprisingly, it hasn't gone well. I found out through mutual friends that he's lost money on smaller ventures in the past month alone, so I feel like I made the right decision. Part of me feels guilty because this is my brother and family matters are complicated. He's literally my blood, and I understand that families sometimes take risks together. I also can't deny that I feel pressure from Mom and Dad's expectations. They've always leaned on me to be the responsible one. But I also feel strongly that enabling this type of risky behavior isn't love. It's setting him up for failure and possibly causing me serious financial stress. I've tried to have calm conversations about boundaries and responsibility, but every attempt turns into an argument. Jason says I'm selfish and cold. Mom says I'm rigid and unsupportive, and Dad seems disappointed in me. I'm starting to wonder if I overreacted, but at the same time, giving him $15,000 would have been reckless and could have affected my ability to pay rent, bills, and savings for the future. I need some outside perspective. Am I really the asshole for refusing to lend my brother a large sum of money for a risky business opportunity, even though my parents are pressuring me and he claims it's a sure thing? Or am I justified in protecting my own financial stability while trying to maintain some boundaries with a sibling who has repeatedly shown poor financial judgment? I genuinely want to support my brother, but I also don't want to be manipulated or put myself at financial risk. AITA? AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me after he lost his job, even though our parents and extended family think I should help. This is a long story, but I want to explain everything so it makes sense. I, 35F, have a younger brother, Jake, 29M. Growing up, we were close, but our personalities are very different. I've always been organized, responsible, and independent, while Jake has struggled with consistency in his life, jobs, finances, and living situations. Over the years, I've tried to support him without enabling him, but that balance has always been tricky. About 4 months ago, Jake lost his job and called me in a panic. He said he had no savings and that he was being evicted from his apartment. At the time, I felt bad and wanted to help, so I told him he could stay with me temporarily while he figured things out. I made it clear that this would be a short-term arrangement, maybe a few weeks at most, and that he needed to actively look for a new job and a place to live. He agreed. At first, it was manageable. He stayed in the guest room, and I tried to help him organize his job search. He didn't overstay his welcome immediately, and I was okay with adjusting my schedule a little to help him get back on his feet. But after a few weeks, nothing had changed. He hadn't applied for jobs consistently, and he had no leads for a new apartment. Instead, he started spending most of his days playing video games or hanging out with friends. I tried to talk to him about it, gently reminding him that our agreement was temporary and that he needed to take responsibility for his situation. He became defensive and said I was pressuring him and being harsh. He also started claiming that he has nowhere else to go and that, as my brother, I should help him no matter what. I explained that I am happy to support him emotionally and give advice, but I cannot provide indefinite housing without any effort on his part. Jake's behavior started affecting my daily life. He doesn't help with chores consistently. He leaves dirty dishes and laundry around, and he started inviting friends over without asking. My personal space and routines are disrupted, and my stress levels are rising. I also have a partner, Alex, 36M, who is supportive but frustrated by the situation. He worries about our privacy, our home environment, and the potential strain on our relationship if this continues. When I told Jake he needed to make a plan and find a place to live soon, he got angry. He accused me of being selfish and unsupportive, and claimed that I was abandoning him when he needed me most. He said I was treating family like tenants, and that our parents would be disappointed in me. This hurt because I have been supportive of him in other ways, like helping him financially with small things, offering career advice, and letting him stay short-term when he genuinely needed it. Jake also started telling extended family members that I am being cruel and refusing to help family in need. Some relatives have called me and pressure me to let him stay, arguing that I'm being unreasonable and that family obligations should take priority over personal boundaries. I tried to explain my perspective, but they dismissed my concerns, saying I should just be a good sister and give him what he wants. I tried to compromise. I offered to pay part of the deposit on a new apartment, help him look for short-term rentals, and even extend a temporary stay if he actively searched for work. He initially agreed, but has done nothing. He refuses to take responsibility and frames every discussion as me being cruel or uncaring. I feel trapped between wanting to help my brother and protecting my household and mental health. I love him, but I also feel like giving and would enable him to avoid responsibility and create resentment for me in the long run. I've tried to maintain a balance, offering guidance, emotional support, and practical help, but he refuses all solutions that don't involve living with me indefinitely. I also worry about future precedent. If I allow him to stay indefinitely without contributing, it may encourage similar behavior in the future, and it will continue to strain my relationship with Alex and disrupt my life. I feel that I've been fair and reasonable by offering alternatives, help with job searching, and temporary accommodations, but he refuses to take responsibility. So, I'm asking AITA for refusing to let my brother live with me indefinitely after losing his job, even though he and some family members insist I should help because I owe it to him as family. AITA for refusing to let my adult son move back in after he lost his job, even though my parents and some family think I'm being unreasonable. I, 52F, have a son, Alex, 25M, who has always been independent in some ways but has struggled with responsibility since graduating college. He has a good heart and is very charming, but he tends to avoid accountability and has a habit of leaning on others when things get difficult. I've done my best to guide him, giving advice and support without enabling him, but he hasn't always followed it. Alex had been living in a small apartment with a roommate while working at a local retail store. He recently lost his job unexpectedly due to company downsizing. He called me immediately and explained that he couldn't cover his rent this month and didn't have any savings to fall back on. I sympathized, but explained that I had financial commitments of my own, and taking him in could create strain on my household. My partner and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we already have 2 dogs that require space and attention. Alex responded by saying he understood, but then asked if he could move in just for a couple of months until he found a new job. I asked about his job search plan, his savings, and how he would contribute to household expenses. He said he didn't have much saved, but would figure it out once he got here. That felt vague and irresponsible to me, so I said I needed more concrete assurances before agreeing. I also mentioned that moving in would disrupt the routine and space for my partner and me, and it wasn't something I could commit to lightly. He became frustrated and accused me of not supporting my own son, and said I was being cold. He even mentioned that my parents might be disappointed in me for refusing. I tried to explain that my decision wasn't about not caring. It was about maintaining boundaries and teaching responsibility. I offered alternatives. I could help him update his resume, connect him with job listings, and even cover a portion of his rent directly to his landlord if necessary. He refused these alternatives, insisting that moving back in was the easiest solution. After this, I spoke with my parents. They said I was being too harsh and that I should help him like any mother would. They suggested I let him move in temporarily to get back on his feet. I tried explaining my perspective that short-term help can quickly become long-term dependency if boundaries aren't set, but they were dismissive. They accused me of being controlling and of letting him fail unnecessarily. Some extended family members have also weighed in, saying I should prioritize family over logistics, and I've received messages implying that my decision is selfish. I feel torn because I love Alex and want to support him, but But I also feel strongly that enabling him to move in without a plan could reinforce bad habits and create tension in my household. Alex has since been applying for jobs, but is frustrated that he doesn't have a place to stay immediately. He has even mentioned staying with friends, but those arrangements are temporary and uncertain. I offered to help him with transportation, cover small expenses, and provide emotional support, but he insists that moving back in is the only viable option. I also worry about long-term implications. If I let him move in now, it might be difficult to ask him to leave later, and it could strain my relationship with my partner. I've seen situations where adult children moving back home without clear terms end up staying for months or years, creating resentment on both sides. I want Alex to succeed independently, but I also don't want to be seen as unsupportive. So, AITA for refusing to let my adult son move back in after losing his job. Even though he asked for temporary help and my family thinks I'm being unreasonable, I feel like I'm trying to balance love, responsibility, and boundaries, but I'm not sure if I'm being too rigid or if I'm justified in my decision. I want him to learn to manage adversity while still knowing I'm there for him. But it seems like people see my refusal as a lack of care rather than a boundary. This has caused tension not just with Alex, but also with my parents and extended family, who are divided on whether I made the right choice. Some friends suggest I could have compromised by letting him stay with clear rules and a timeline, but I worry that even with rules, past behavior shows he might not respect them. I still want a healthy relationship with him and hope he finds stable independence, but I can't help feeling guilty for standing firm. AITA for refusing to let my best friend's boyfriend stay at my apartment after he got kicked out of his place. I, 30F, have been living in a small but comfortable city apartment for the past 5 years. I work as a graphic designer and value my home as a personal sanctuary. I'm very protective of my space and generally keep my social life separate from my home life, except for close friends. My best friend, Mia, 29F, has been part of my life since college, and we've always shared everything with each other. I've helped her through breakups, career changes, and family drama, and she's done the same for me. We have a very strong bond. Recently, Mia's boyfriend, Jason, 31M, ran into trouble. He got evicted from his apartment due to unpaid rent, and Mia asked me if Jason could stay at my place temporarily until he gets back on his feet. She painted a picture of him being responsible and grateful, assuring me it would only be for a few weeks. I have to admit, I was hesitant because I barely know Jason personally. I met him a handful of times at Mia's place, and while he's polite, he gave me a weird impression. Something about his energy felt off. Maybe it was the way he bragged about partying all night or how he spoke about his past financial irresponsibility, but I didn't want to judge too harshly. I told Mia I needed to think about it because I value my privacy and need stability in my home. I offered to help in other ways, like helping Jason find temporary housing, helping him apply for short-term rentals, or even contributing to a hostel or Airbnb for him for a few days. Mia seemed disappointed, but said she understood. That night, she called me in tears, saying Jason really needed help and that I was being cold by refusing. I told her I wasn't refusing to help him in general. I just couldn't host him in my apartment, which is a space I rely on for mental health and work. The next day, Mia came over to my apartment unannounced with Jason in tow. They said they wanted to talk it over in person and insisted that it wouldn't be a big deal. I was uncomfortable and told them both firmly that my apartment is my private space and I cannot have him stay here. Jason looked surprised and slightly offended, and Mia started to cry again. She said I was being selfish and accused me of not trusting her judgment about him. I tried to explain that trust wasn't the issue. I just don't know him well enough to feel comfortable sharing my home, and that's a boundary I have to maintain. Things escalated after that. Mia started messaging me daily, asking when I would change my mind and reminding me how much Jason needed a place. She also mentioned that other friends had offered their apartments, which made me feel like I was being unfairly singled out. Jason, on the other hand, started sending me polite but increasingly insistent messages, saying he would be careful, pay for utilities, and even clean my apartment. He framed it as everyone needs a friend in times of crisis, which I understand, but it felt manipulative. I spoke to a mutual friend about the situation, and they suggested I might be overreacting and should just let him stay for a short period. I've tried to compromise by offering to help Jason find a temporary rental, paying for a few nights at a cheap hotel, or even helping him with groceries and transportation. Mia keeps insisting it's not the same as staying in my apartment and that it would only be for a few weeks. I told her that the issue is not the duration. It's the fact that my home is my safe space, and having someone I barely know living here, no matter how temporary, would disrupt my life. I also considered letting him stay in my apartment while I worked remotely or traveled, but I realized that giving someone unrestricted access to my home, with my belongings and personal space, makes me extremely anxious. In the past, I've had roommates and casual house guests who didn't respect boundaries, and it led to a lot of stress. I can't repeat that experience, especially when this person isn't someone I trust or know well. Since then, Mia has been distant and passive-aggressive during calls and texts. She's also told our other friends that I refuse to help someone in need, which makes me feel judged. Some friends have expressed that I could be more accommodating, while others understand my perspective. I feel torn because I want to support Mia and help Jason get back on his feet, but I also have to protect my mental health and respect my boundaries. Alex, my partner, has been supportive and agrees that having Jason stay here would be risky. He reminded me that it's okay to say no, even to people I care about, and that boundaries are essential for maintaining a healthy home environment. I want to be compassionate, but not at the expense of my safety, privacy, or peace of mind. So, AITA for refusing to let my best friend's boyfriend stay at my apartment after he got evicted? I feel guilty about making Mia upset, but I also feel that compromising my boundaries would be a mistake. I've tried to help in other ways, but she insists that it's not enough. I'm struggling to balance supporting my friend and maintaining my own life, and I'm worried that refusing might permanently damage our relationship. I've thought about every possible compromise, but nothing seems acceptable to me without crossing a line I can't ignore. I feel like I'm being forced into choosing between my friendship and my own well-being, and it's causing me a lot of stress. I just want to do the right thing without compromising my home or mental health, but I can't tell if that makes me the asshole. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding after she called me selfish. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding, even though she's accusing me of being selfish for not participating. This situation has been escalating for months, and I'm honestly torn between feeling guilty and standing my ground. To give some background, I, 33F, have always been close to my sister, Jenna, 30F. Growing up, we were inseparable, and even as adults, we've shared holidays, vacations, and family events. We've had disagreements, of course, but nothing that caused a lasting rift until this wedding planning started. Jenna got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 32M, about a year ago. At first, I was thrilled for them, but the excitement quickly turned into stress as I learned more about the wedding plans. Jenna and Mark decided to have a destination wedding in Iceland. At first, I thought it sounded amazing, but when I found out the details, my excitement faded. They're insisting that guests cover their own travel and lodging. Flights from where I live would be at least $1,500 per person, and hotels in Reykjavik are extremely expensive during their wedding dates. On top of that, they've chosen a hotel with a minimum 3-night stay, so the total cost for me to attend would be around $2,500. That's not including food, transportation, or any sightseeing I might want to do while there. I'm a teacher, and while I do have a stable income, this is an amount I cannot comfortably afford without taking on debt, which I try to avoid. When I expressed my concern about the cost, Jenna said that she wanted all of her closest friends and family there, and implied that anyone who didn't attend just didn't care about her. I tried explaining that it wasn't about not caring. It's about my financial situation. I suggested other ways I could participate, like helping with wedding planning, sending a heartfelt video message, or attending a pre-wedding event closer to home. She dismissed these ideas, insisting that if you really love me, you'll be there. I talked to my parents about it. They are retired and on a fixed income, so they also can't easily cover the trip. They tried to mediate, suggesting she could make the trip optional or contribute to some guest expenses, but Jenna said that the wedding budget couldn't accommodate that. Mark agreed with her, saying they couldn't subsidize everyone. I tried to reason with her multiple times, explaining that it was not out of lack of love, but financial reality. Each conversation ended with her accusing me of being selfish, unsupportive, and even jealous of her happiness. She has since sent me multiple texts saying things like, "I guess you'd rather spend $2,500 on your Netflix subscription than be there for your sister," which honestly hurt. I finally decided to write a formal response, letting her know that I would not be attending the wedding, but I would send a generous gift and a personal letter to express my love and excitement for her and Mark. I also offered to help with any wedding planning tasks that could be done remotely. I thought this was a fair compromise, but she reacted very negatively. She accused me of choosing money over family and claimed that my absence would ruin her special day. She even suggested I wasn't invited to the rehearsal dinner or any pre-wedding events because if I didn't value her, why should she include me? Now, our parents are frustrated with both of us. They understand my financial concerns, but they also see Jenna's point of view that family presence is meaningful. Some of our extended family have sided with her, saying that I should just make it work financially and that family should prioritize events like weddings. I feel like my sister is being completely unreasonable. I've never asked her to pay for me, but I cannot take on that kind of expense. I've been clear that my love and support are unwavering. I just can't physically be there due to financial constraints. Yet, every conversation makes me feel like the villain. I'm worried that refusing to attend might permanently damage my relationship with her, but I also feel that attending under financial strain would breed resentment. I should also mention that Jenna and Mark have a history of extravagant spending. They've gone on multiple luxury vacations and have high-end tastes. They are perfectly capable of covering some guests' expenses if they wanted, but they refuse to do so, citing fairness or the wedding budget. Some friends have told me I'm in the right for setting boundaries and not putting myself in financial jeopardy. Others think I'm being insensitive to my sister's wishes. I've been ruminating over this constantly because family is important to me, and I don't want to be remembered as the selfish sibling. But at the same time, I cannot justify spending a year's worth of savings to attend a single event, no matter how meaningful it is. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of the exorbitant cost, even though she claims I'm being selfish? Or am I justified in setting boundaries around my finances and showing support in other ways? I'm genuinely torn because I don't want to hurt my sister, but I also don't want to put myself in a financially precarious situation. I'm seeking a perspective outside of my family and friends because I feel like both sides are emotionally charged, and I want to know if I'm being unreasonable. AITA for refusing to let my best friend move in with me indefinitely, even though she says I owe her after everything we've been through. This is going to be a long story, but I want to explain all the context so people understand why I feel conflicted. I, 32F, have a best friend, Lisa, 31F, who I've known since college. We've been through a lot together, moving to new cities, bad breakups, family emergencies. Over the years, I've supported her financially and emotionally in ways I would consider significant, and I've always considered our friendship to be very close. A few months ago, Lisa lost her job unexpectedly. She had been working at a small marketing firm, and due to downsizing, she was let go without much notice. She called me immediately, panicked, saying she had no savings and that her landlord was threatening eviction. I felt terrible and offered her a place to stay temporarily, just for a few weeks until she could sort out a new job and find somewhere else to live. She agreed, and I thought this would be manageable. At first, things were fine. Lisa stayed in my guest room, helped a little around the house, and seemed motivated to find a new job. She also asked for advice on resumes and interviews, and I tried to help however I could. However, after a month, nothing had changed. She wasn't actively applying for positions, and she started expecting me to provide meals, laundry, and general support beyond what I had agreed to. I tried talking to her about it. I explained that this was meant to be a temporary stay and that I could not continue to support her indefinitely without some effort on her part. I reminded her that she needed to actively look for a job and a new place to live. Lisa became defensive and said I was pressuring her and not being a good friend. She started saying things like, "After everything you've done for me over the years, I thought you'd help me without question, and I thought you valued our friendship enough to put me first." The situation became stressful for me and my household. I live with my partner, Alex, 34M, who has been supportive but frustrated by the lack of space and privacy. Lisa spends most of her time in the living room or kitchen, often leaves dishes and laundry piled up, and has invited friends over without asking. Our routines are disrupted, and the stress is starting to affect my mental health and my relationship. I try to set clear boundaries. I told Lisa that she could stay for one more week, but she had to show progress, job applications submitted, interviews scheduled, and a plan for moving out. She agreed initially, but has not followed through. Every time I bring it up, she frames it as me being selfish and ungrateful for everything she believes I've done for her in the past. She even suggested that our friendship might not survive if I force her out. Lisa has also started involving other friends, telling them that I'm being cruel and not a real friend. Some mutual friends have contacted me, suggesting that I just let her stay and that I'm overreacting. I feel like no matter how politely I communicate my boundaries, she frames it as a moral failing on my part. I've tried compromise in multiple ways. I offered to help cover the cost of a short-term Airbnb, assist with job applications, and even help her secure a rental deposit. I also suggested a structured schedule for the remaining time so her stay wouldn't interfere with our routines. She rejected all these options, insisting that living with me is the only solution. I feel guilty because I want to help her and I value our friendship, but I also feel that giving would enable her to avoid responsibility and would likely lead to resentment in the long term. I've supported her in other ways, emotionally, financially, and with advice, but living together indefinitely under these circumstances is not something I can manage. I've spoken to a few friends, and opinions are divided. Some say I'm being unreasonable in that. Friendship requires sacrifice, while others say I'm right to protect my household, mental health, and relationship. I feel caught between wanting to help someone I care about and maintaining boundaries that are necessary for my own well-being. So, AITA for refusing to let my best friend move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her after all the support I've given her over the years. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she broke up with her boyfriend, even though she thinks I'm being cruel. I, 38F, have a younger sister, Megan, 33F, who has a history of moving in and out of different friends and family members' homes whenever she faces personal issues. She is intelligent, funny, and generally kind, but she tends to avoid responsibility when life gets tough. I've always tried to support her emotionally, but I've also learned over the years that letting her move in temporarily often turns into months of disruption, tension, and resentment. Recently, Megan ended a long-term relationship. She called me in tears, saying that she needed to leave her apartment immediately because being there was too painful and that she didn't have anywhere else to go. She asked if she could stay with me until she got back on her feet. I felt torn because I empathize with her, but I also know from experience that having her move in comes with challenges. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with my partner and our dog. Our space is limited, and I have a very structured routine due to work, household responsibilities, and health considerations. Over the past few years, whenever Megan has stayed with me, even short-term, there have been issues. She struggles with boundaries, sometimes brings friends over unannounced, leaves dishes and laundry piling up, and generally disrupts the rhythm of our home. Each stay, no matter how short it was supposed to be, eventually led to arguments and tension. When Megan asked to move in, I explained all of this gently. I said I was willing to help in other ways. I could assist her in finding temporary housing, help with her resume and job applications, or cover a small portion of short-term Airbnb. I stressed that I could not have her live with me because it would create stress for me and my partner, and past experience showed it would be difficult to set boundaries. Megan became upset. She said I was turning my back on her at a time when she needed family the most. She claimed I was prioritizing my comfort over her well-being. I tried to reassure her that my decision wasn't about refusing support, but about managing my own household and maintaining boundaries that protect everyone's well-being. I explained that emotional support and helping her find solutions could be just as valuable as having her live with me. After our conversation, she started contacting mutual friends and family, saying I was being cold and unsupportive. Some of my relatives called me, questioning why I wouldn't help my sister in a time of need. They suggested that letting her stay for a few weeks would be the right family thing to do. I told them that I love Megan and I am willing to help in many ways, but I cannot let her live with me because of past experiences and the impact it has on my household. Megan, meanwhile, has been trying to negotiate. She suggested she could pay rent, do all the chores, and keep to herself. I acknowledged her offers, but I explained that even with good intentions, her history shows that rules and promises often don't hold once she moves in. I also mentioned that it would create tension with my partner, who is uncomfortable with long-term guests, and I cannot impose that stress on her home. Some friends say I could compromise by having her stay for a very limited time, like a weekend, to decompress, and I've considered it. However, given how her previous stays have extended far beyond what was agreed upon, I worry that even a short stay could become prolonged. I also have concerns about enabling a pattern where she avoids dealing with her problems directly and relies on others to accommodate her whenever life gets difficult. I feel guilty because I see my sister struggling emotionally. I want to provide support and love, but I also have to balance that with my own boundaries and the well-being of my household. I've offered assistance in many ways, helping her find temporary housing, helping with job applications, checking in frequently, and being there emotionally, but she interprets it as rejection because it doesn't involve her moving in. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she broke up with her boyfriend, even though she feels abandoned and family thinks I'm being cold? I feel like I'm trying to maintain a healthy balance between supporting her and protecting my household, but I'm unsure if I'm being too rigid or if my boundaries are justified. I want to help her in ways that don't create long-term disruption or resentment, but it seems she interprets any refusal as a personal slight. This has caused tension in our relationship. She's hurt and distant. Some family members are frustrated with me, and I feel trapped between love for my sister and my need to maintain stability in my own life. I'm trying to support her without compromising my own boundaries, but I can't help feeling guilty for standing firm. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.